Welcome back to the As Told by You podcast. I guess what happens is I'm going to introduce the guest that I bring on, and you introduce the guest that you bring on, right?
Then do I get to sit in that chair? Do we get to switch back?
We totally could. That makes sense.
I like that.
Yeah. It'd be like Johnny and like Ed McMahon, you'd be like in the primary and secondary position, So
Okay.
if Ed decided to host, then Johnny would
Ed's
sit
not the host. He's just the lackey on this couch.
Yeah, that's true. That's not, I don't know. None of those references make any sense. But anyway, I wanted to welcome Lynn on the podcast today. Lynn, tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
Good question. Well, I help who I am. I'm Lynn Tickner, and I own a creative marketing firm, also a naming agency called Ink and Key, and we help businesses get their words right.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Tell me how you came up with the name Ink and Key.
That's a good question. So I have a really different founder's story, different from most people. My background is not in marketing, it's in education. And I only built my website because I was like, well, I guess I need to do something like for a place. I was just doing freelance copywriting and just trying to make ends meet. I have a whole story I won't go into right now, but
no, don't go into the story on the podcast. That would be crazy.
I mean,
we like stories here.
Okay. Okay.
Why would we tell a story on a podcast?
It would take the whole time. But yeah, I was doing everything I could. I'll do a little bit of the story.
Okay.
I was basically, I taught school for several years, and then I homeschooled both of my kids, who are now 27 and 25. And as they were into their high school years, I had more time to do other things, just try to earn money. And so I started entering naming contests online. I found out,
That
about
those exist?
Yeah, I found out those
I didn't know that
existed,
either.
and I was
Okay.
like, okay, like I'm actually pretty good at this, and I was winning contests, and it was like $500, Okay, we've got groceries this week, people. It was like exciting, and I was doing that, and I had always been a writer and enjoyed writing, and I taught writing when I worked in like school district Lexington and Richland School District 5.
Right.
I helped my class and then the entire school. This was at Irmo Elementary School years ago, and then the entire district set up publishing companies for their classrooms, and then for the whole school, and then for the district, just so the children could write a story and then actually get it published. And so I always loved writing. And I started doing some marketing copywriting and had some different people just kind of give me a shot. And that started to grow a little bit. And I felt like, okay, I guess I need to build some kind of a website just so that people can find me for freelance copywriting.
And away we go.
Now we're back to the name. And so I grew up in, pre computer age, I suppose. And so I learned to type in high school on a typewriter. So I was thinking about a typewriter, and Ink and Key came from the connection of the key and the ink. And that creates letters. Letters create words. Words form ideas.
Nice.
And that's kind of where the name came from. So I'm a fan of metaphorical names.
No,
So there
that's
you go.
awesome.
I love names that mean something.
Yeah. Well, and Brian and I, when we partnered in, I guess we started in 2018, right?
The conversation started in 2017.
So 2017.
But yeah.
But it took us, it took us a year solid to settle on a name, because I was branded as a videography company, and we wanted to have something that was less branded as videography. And so, we went through entire yellow legal pads of like, what about this? What about this? And the problem in 2018 with coming up with a name, and this is probably one thing that you run across, is there is no name that isn't taken.
Oh, yeah.
Period.
Yep.
There just isn't. And, unless it's just terrible, right? And so...
Or you can't pronounce it.
Or there's, or nobody knows what in the world you're talking about or whatever. But, this is a complete tangent, but I have realized recently, like, you can tell the period where a company was named based on the name. So, if it was named in the 30s, 40s, or 50s, it's always the family name. So it's always Ford or, Procter and Gamble. It's always like the name of the people that started it. And then in the 80s, you started to get into things like, we want to talk about exactly what we do here, and have what we do in the name. And modern times, we've gotten to this esoteric, like, if you had a car repair place, you would call it muffler, or you'd call it, spark, or you'd have to have some type of like thing. I love that stuff. And now I didn't love our process. It was very painful for us to come up with the name. And, so it's definitely an interesting job to get into.
It's tricky.
Yeah.
For sure.
And
do you have a specific process that you use to help people get to that naming point?
Yeah, I do. Going back to the naming contests, I'm a problem solver. And so that may come from my education background, I'm not sure. But I noticed some problems on some of these contest sites, especially when it came to communication between the business owner who would start the contest and then the creatives who would be from, people all over the world could join some of these platforms and just, they're trying to make extra money, which I totally respect. I was trying to do the same thing. But the people that would join these contests didn't necessarily know anything about branding or naming, and they weren't invested in the success of the business owner. They were just trying to, let me just win this contest. So that was the problem on one side, is like the overwhelm for the business owner to go through piles and piles of names, most of which were not very good. And then for the creatives like me, and I know there were others too, that I really, even though this wasn't my platform, I really cared about the business owner and I wanted to do a great job. And I was studying branding and learning. And so I was putting in good names, but yet there wasn't a way for me to connect with that business owner and communicate with them.
Because it was just the contest.
It was just a contest. And so, depended on the platform, but there weren't a lot of good ways to receive feedback for me as a creative, and for the business owner, if the business owner wanted to contact me and say, hey, I like this, can we iterate on this idea? There was just a lot of problems, and I kind of was like, you know what? I think I can do better than this. And that's kind of how I pulled together some people that I had met online. This was back in 2015, 2016. Well, 2015, I think, actually. And I said, what if we did our own thing and we did a contest, and it was just, us as a group, we could just split the money. And they're like, let's do it. And I was like, okay. And I already had my little website with my freelance writing. So I came up with a process that was all about collaboration and communication and, again, I didn't have any money to really invest in starting my business. So I was reading articles every night on how to promote your business for free. And I was reading articles about marketing and just learning as I went, And so we got our first client. And I think it was probably about 4 months in after I had this big launch that was like completely crickets, of course. But we got our first client and we were so excited. I was like, they're going to really pay us, to do this. And, as we have, grown, I started with 3 people and I now have an 18-person naming team.
Wow.
And, almost everyone is in the United States, except I have one person who's in Pakistan. And because we have clients from all over the world, so it's helpful to have some people that speak different languages. I have another a person on the team who speaks, 5 or 6 languages. Yeah. So she's helpful when it comes to linguistic analysis. And then I have someone in Canada. Doesn't necessarily count as out of the country, but and then I have my friend Diana, who is in the Netherlands. And then everyone else is just kind of spread around the United States. But these are just... almost everyone has been with me from the beginning. So they're kind of like my little family, and we have grown and gotten better. We kind of have continuing education where we're always learning and growing, but it's really all about collaborating. It's not a contest. It's each person independently comes up with name ideas because it's just a really awesome, diverse group of people. We have people of all ages, because I think diversity also should include people from different ages, because different generations, we think differently and we approach problems differently. And so when you have all this diversity that's pulled together when it comes to naming, everybody has their own process and their own ideas, their own personality, life experiences, and all of that put together with their creative gifts gives the client just an amazing selection of names to choose from. And then it gets into the collaboration and let's make this better and let's work on this. And it's just a lot of fun. So we get a lot of repeat customers because they enjoy working with us.
I think that's fascinating.
So they're entrepreneurs and have multiple businesses, repeat customers?
Yes, we have a lot of kind of serial entrepreneurs, people that start businesses, sell them, start more. So they come back to us over and over again because they enjoy the process. We have, people that need to name products. So I have a name drop. So we've had Hershey's come to us 3 times.
Wow.
For names. Unfortunately, none of the products that we named actually went forward to production, because that's just kind of how the process works. We've had some other companies that are really big that you'd recognize that I cannot.
Hershey's is a good example of that 1940s name.
Yeah.
Right? My name's Hershey, so that's what I'm going to name the company.
That's true.
Right?
That's a really good point.
And we're in Hershey, Pennsylvania, so might as well just go all the way, So that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's so fascinating. I don't know that I've ever heard of anything like that.
I was thinking, my question about the entrepreneur is, your company that you start from scratch is like your child. Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't you want to name it?
Well, I can tell you why I wouldn't want to name it is because of the process that you and I went through, which is and this is a question I had for you, is how do you deal with the everything available all the time problem, right? Where we're a relatively small business in Columbia, South Carolina. Why can't we have the same name as a company in Oregon, that does a different thing or a similar thing? That's got to be confounding to do that, right? And that's the problem we ran into, is that every cool name we came up with is already used by somebody somewhere else, And
Yeah. There's actually a name for that, and for that, how the brain works. And there's a name for this, I don't know, whenever multiple people are thinking of the same original idea at the same time. I can't think of what that's called. But anyway, it just happens. Basically, I tell people, if you came up with it, somebody else probably came up with it first. And so, that's one of the reasons why having a nice team of 18 people to come up with ideas is helpful, because you honestly need a large volume of ideas to go through to get to a short list.
And research too.
And research, So I have a regular person who does preliminary trademark screening for us, which is really, really necessary. We approach naming a little bit differently. There are some, larger agencies that they do tons and tons of research on a name before they even present the name to the client. And we flip it a little bit. So we just focus on the creativity and let's crank out these names. Let's make sure they're relevant to what the client wants and all of that. But also we focus on volume first, and then let's get down to a short list and also feedback from the client. And once we get down to that short list, that's when we dig into the research. And because the problem that happens, I see a lot, is just because, like you said, a name for your business is like your baby. So it's very emotional, especially if you have multiple decision makers. There's a lot of kind of, what I say to people is I say I'm a non-certified naming therapist because it really is emotional. It's really about making that decision. And so one of the things that I see is that people get a favorite and they fall in love with it, and it's the one. And then after, we speak to a trademark attorney and start going through that process, it's like, no, it's not going to work.
Can't use that,
Yeah, so then there's just so much disappointment and, we have to start again. But if you can kind of get everyone to sign off at the beginning on some objective criteria, like we agree, if the name checks this, and this box, we're going to consider it. as a viable candidate, you get that agreement up front and just sort of try to approach the decision-making process before you even start the naming process and get agreement. That helps. And then that way, when that disappointment comes, which it usually does, then there's more candidates waiting. So that can be helpful. I don't know.
And once we settled on As Told By, as we were doing our research on it, we found out that Disney Channel had a show called As Told by Ginger in the early 90s or mid 90s. And so all of the properties related to As Told By are all tied up by Disney, right? And so we were like, that's enough different that nobody's ever going to mistake the two things. And but the SEO is like impossible for the name. The name SEO just can't happen. But like, so we dealt with that. But like I found one of the notebooks when I was cleaning out a closet. I found one of the notebooks that had all our names on it, and we probably had 40 or 50 names that we had put down.
I know the process was long. Yeah, but we actually used the process of diving into what our brand is. What are the characteristics of our company? How does it relate? What are the primary things that we want to focus on? So there was a method to the madness.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And, the interesting part is As Told By was on the list, and we moved past it, found another one that we almost used, and then we came back to As Told By.
Yeah, we bought domains for almost everything. Every time we came up with a good idea, we checked and see if the domain was available. And I think we bought 5 or 6 domains as we were going through it. And I think. But what's funny is we got a lot of pushback on the name in the beginning, and we just decided we're just running with it. We're going to brand this thing. And this is what we're going with. But it is really interesting. I wish we had known you existed, when we were doing this, because it would have been nice to have some guidance through it, But
I couldn't imagine 18 more people in the room.
That is true. Like, that's what we need, another idea.
Yeah. Right.
Thanks.
Right.
Yeah. But I think that is definitely helpful. And I think what's interesting is that I call that the Pixar method, which, if you know how Pixar makes movies, they get the idea on the table first and then refine it, as it goes along. They don't have to have it perfect before they present it. And I think that's a really good way of doing things creatively, is just throwing those ideas out and sifting through what works, And as I remember, As Told By was on the first list too. And that was one of the first 4.
Yeah, it was one I came up with because obviously story is a very prominent thing in what we do and our philosophy and how you should market your organization. And I saw it in a book, just flipping through a book, and it was As Told By, and then the author's name, and I was like, ding, ding, ding.
And the original idea was that we were going to do, every time we had a new client, it would be As Told by Lynn, or As Told by Ashley. And so it was like the ... was implied, as we came through it. But and we've definitely grown into it. I think it was a little bit of a settling in period.
And that's the case for every name, and that's one of the things I think that a lot of people don't understand, is that you do have to grow into it. So that's good that you we just figured that out.
We just sort of have adapted to it over the years. And our owl, has become our sort of our angry little owl has become a signature piece, So that's awesome. Well, I wanted to ask about StoryBrand as well, because as I remember, I know that like Lori Gardner is StoryBrand certified, or was at one point. And I'm fascinated with the StoryBrand framework. And I told you in an email, we've always had a hard time doing the StoryBrand framework for ourselves. Talk about StoryBrand and how that affected you.
Yeah. I, like so many other story brand guides that I know, started out by reading the book. I don't remember who gave it to me or how I came across it, but I read the book and it just sort of, like, I don't know, I picture this chunk, like just something clicked, right? And it's just like, wow, everything made sense just with the framework. And for people that aren't familiar, StoryBrand is just a framework of 7 clear talking points based on story. It's all about your customer that just helps you get your words right so that you can get really, really clear on what your customer wants and how you help them, so that when you have these talking points, it's just a way of freeing up a business owner so that you know how to talk about yourself in a consistent way, and so that your customers, when they hear you talk, they're invited into a story about themselves, which makes them pay attention, because our brains are just wired to pay attention to story. And so it resonated, and my impression of Donald Miller and the company was like, wow, these guys are really generous. They just, I got on their email list and I followed on social and I did all the things, and I sort of got everything I could get for free and consumed a lot of content. And I started using just some of the basic concepts with my clients, because by that time we had gone from just naming to graphic design and web design and content writing and all these things. But there was kind of a missing piece in my head about, like, how do I write this website for X industry,
Yeah.
And it just kind of filled in this empty spot for me as, a very young marketing agency owner, still trying to figure things out. It just really helped. And so, reading the book and then becoming an expert in the framework, 2 different things. And I just decided to go for it. Went to Nashville in July of 2019 and did the training and never looked back.
Do you receive leads as a certified story brand person? Do they actually feed you leads to people who are interested in having your services?
Sort of. Okay. Yeah. It's not, I don't want to set up the expectation, that you're just going to get lots and lots of leads, because you're not. You'll get a few.
Manna from heaven.
Right. Yeah. No, you have to figure it out for yourself. So They equip you with the framework, and they give us tons of resources. There is a platform that, the Marketing Made Simple platform, that you can go and you can scroll through all the different StoryBrand guide profiles and pick a guide to work with. So, but I won't say that I've gotten lots and lots of leads. So I actually got one last week. So you just never know. It just depends.
So in addition to the naming, tell me how you use StoryBrand in your business.
Yeah. I feel like helping a business get their words right is the foundation of everything, because I've never met a business owner who's not excited and passionate about what they do. Even if they're overwhelmed and frustrated by this or that, if you get them talking about why they started, like I could do the same thing with you and get you talking about why you started, you'd get excited about it, right? Yeah. And you're passionate about what you do. And so it's frustrating for these business owners who are excited about what they do, and they're in it to help people do something, right? They're in it to solve a problem, but they're going unnoticed by the people that need them most. And that's what tugs on my heart, and that's where StoryBrand comes in, because getting your message clear and learning how to be consistent with it, and if you have a team and if you have employees, getting everyone on the same page, that's the answer to like 100 questions and 100 problems. And I've found so many of the times, I'll ask people, what's the most frustrating thing for you right now in your marketing? And doesn't matter what they say. I would say most of the time the answer is, okay, let's figure out your messaging first. Because once you get clarity and you banish confusion, then you can start doing some of these other things and dial in this or that area of your marketing that needs help. So, yeah.
That's amazing. Well, and a challenge we have almost constantly is talking about the ROI of story, right? And business owners, especially people who have a service or product business.
Yeah.
It's a lot of it is about ROI, and it's about, okay, story is fluffy and it's something I'd like to do at some point, but I can't afford to do that now. I've got to get business, right?
Yeah.
So I can't take the time to establish all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, our standpoint is that's not the way to look at it, right?
Yeah.
The way to look at it is you want to make connection with people, and that connection happens instantly. And the minute you start being authentic and sharing your story, talk about how you approach that with people, and is there pushback on the idea of story having monetary value?
Absolutely. And there's also a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings too. People will come to me and say, "Oh, you're a story brand guide. Will you help us tell our story?" Mm-hmm. And I'm like, nope. But I can help you tell your customer's story, because it's really not about you. Your website's not about you. Your emails series are not about you. Your lead generator, it's all about your customer. Now, it circles back to you because you're there to help them. You're there to serve your customer. But the only way you can get their attention long enough so that they can understand what you do and how you can help them is if you invite them into a story in which they're the hero, you're the guide, and you help them overcome whatever this problem is that's standing in their way of getting them what they want, so they can become who they want to become. It's the whole transformation story. And so, people will come and say, I don't prefer to be treated as a fast food marketing company. Like, I'd like a website with a side order of fries, please. And we'll do that, but people miss out. Mm-hmm. People will come and say, "Oh, can you help us run these ads?" And the first thing I want to do is, well, let's take a look at your website. Where you're spending all this money on ads, right? And then you're driving people to a website that is completely confusing. I don't know. When I look at your website, I don't know what you do. I don't know how you make my life better. I don't know what I'm supposed to do to buy it. I'm confused. I'm gone. And so that's just a business wasting money. So that's one.
A lot of those out there.
Yeah, so much. And it's just like,
and they love wasting money.
They do.
And I don't really, it's so funny. Yeah. We talk about this a lot. Like, why would they do it this way?
Yeah.
Where it's just noise, right?
Yeah.
And I referred to somebody, I won't say who, but I referred to somebody's Instagram the other day as a mailbox full of flyers. Mm-hmm. It's like, why would you create an Instagram that's a mailbox full of flyers? Nobody wants to see that. It's not. Yeah. It's not contributing to the. It's not contributing to the ecosystem. It's not doing things that are going to move people, and it is an interesting dilemma that we face, and the video with a side of fries is the same problem, right? It's like we have a lot of situations in the year where we make something beautiful that we love and the client loves, but they have no plan for what they're going to do with it. They've got no audience to show it to. Yeah. It's like we're all sitting around a little campfire going, look at our little beautiful video. Sorry, that's my wife calling me. My wife just went on another job interview. So not to go on a tangent here, but my wife was a wedding photographer for a long time, quit doing wedding photography when our second child was born, and has been a stay-at-home mom for the last 15 years. And just went to Midlands Tech and got certified in CNA and phlebotomy and EKG, and now she's out interviewing for jobs, and she's gotten 4 interviews and 4 job offers.
That's exciting.
It's like every time she goes out for another job, she gets another job offer. So she's on one today. That's her calling me to tell me how it went. So I'll have to call her when this is over. But I think it's so frustrating for us. We love making beautiful things. We love making things that are right for the client and that help them and all of that kind of stuff. But boy, that hurdle is just, what is that other step? How do you get it to the people that that need it? And that's a big challenge. And that's why we exist. I mean, that's why we formed our company, is because I was making videos for people that didn't know what to do with them, and they sat on the shelf,
Yeah.
Or they'd plop them on the website, and making a video and plopping it on the website is certainly an aspect of it, but that's not it. That's not what you should be. That's not where it should end,
Yeah.
And so it makes a big difference. So talk about the difference that the Story Brand has made, because obviously you haven't been. When did you get Story Brand certified?
July of 2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
So before that, so talk about kind of the transformation. What's it been like since then?
Yeah, it was just a huge transformation for me. It was a really big investment financially for me at a time that I was actually about to go through a divorce and completely blow up my entire life. So I decided, let's just go all the way and take some big action and go to Nashville too, as long as we're at it. So I was able to, in my head, I felt more credible. Because, you heard my little origin story of school teacher, homeschool mom, freelance writing. Okay, let's start this thing, and just started without knowing what I was doing. And so having that certification badge and then having the training and the resources at my fingertips and the community, oh my gosh. Well, I would renew every year just because of the community. Having all these other guides who are basically an expert. Anything you need, there's a guide who's an expert in that. It's just a wonderful community. So having all that at my fingertips was just really life-changing. I was able to charge more. It gave me confidence to charge more for what I was doing. And I got back from my certification and put the little badge in my email signature, and a nonprofit that I was speaking to emailed me, and she said, "Oh, I didn't know you were Story Brand Guide," and just basically gave me a checklist of everything she wanted, and I made my investment back.
Right there.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was, people don't always make their investment back as quickly, but as I did. But I was overjoyed, of course, to make that back and then start working on a profit. Yeah,
we'll have to send that to Donald Miller, see if he can get you a featured spot. So we'll work on that. It is interesting that Donald Miller and Dave Ramsey are both in Nashville.
No income tax.
Oh, I see. That's interesting. Yeah, because I had when we went to Nashville a couple of years ago for a job, and I was like, I wonder where Dave Ramsey's, I wonder where that whole thing. I didn't even think about Donald Miller being in Nashville, but I remember him talking about that in one of the podcasts. And I'm with you. I've read all the books.
Yeah.
I've listened to all the podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
I'm there to the point that I go, okay, I've got this right.
Yeah.
And Brian and I have both read Story Brand. There's a 2.0 now.
Multiple times.
Yeah, I've read it 3 times. Yeah,
and then the Marketing Made Simple. That was a pretty good one.
Yep. And then he had Business Made Simple, or there was
something like
2 or 3 of them. But
you've always had a problem with the yada yada yada.
Yes, right. And honestly, I think that's where the certification probably comes in handy, right? Where it fills in the, because to get into this process with a client, they've got to buy into the process ahead of time, right? And it can't be that, because a lot of times when people approach us, they're like, okay, we want this thing that our executive director said we have to have.
Right.
And I go, my tendency is to go, well, wait a minute, just like you're saying, wait a minute, what's this going to do for you? Where are we putting it? What's the platform? Where's everything going? And then I give them way too much to think about.
Right.
I use that Donald Miller has a saying that every time you give somebody information, you're handing them an 8-pound bowling ball.
Exactly.
And how many bowling balls can they hold before they start dropping them?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that a lot of the business programs are very much like that, where just to say, if you get them already bought in, here's the process, right? And just getting them to buy in is the challenging piece, to get that started.
Well, one thing that I have learned to do is sort of separate story brand aware clients from non-story brand aware. And so if someone comes to me and they've never read the book, they haven't heard of Donald Miller, I don't add to their confusion by trying to use story brand terminology. I'll just say, okay, before we get started, consistency is one of the most important things. And I'm going to empower you and your team with 7 talking points. So you always know what to say when you're talking about your brand. And when you do that, when you have these 7 talking points, that means that no matter where customers encounter you, they're going to always hear these same things over and over and over again. which helps them memorize who you are so that when they're ready to buy, they're going to think of you first. It also frees you up. You don't have to wonder, what am I going to say for this social media poster? What am I going to write in this sales email? You just go to these talking points and you pick from one of them. So I kind of present it as, I want to set you free, and I want to equip you with these tools that you and your team can use forever.
Yeah.
So
that's so good. I think it's for us, it's the key to everything, right? And
it is.
We'll talk to home services companies, that do HVAC or plumbing or roofing or whatever it is. And, rather than talking about your stuff, right? How qualified my people are, or whatever, how many trucks I have, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. We talk about the feeling. What does it feel like to have a plumbing emergency?
Yeah.
What does it feel like to be that person who needs a plumber right now?
Yeah.
And I don't really care that much about how much it costs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even 100% care about how polite people are, whatever. Can you fix the problem? Can you get here today? Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that's when it comes to the story loop, when it comes to all of that stuff, I think it can be applied to just about anything.
Yeah.
Right. We haven't run across anybody that doesn't need, to do that. But it's something that we definitely love, and honestly, if we could just do more of it. Story is the foundation of what we started to do, right?
Yeah.
Is just create good emotional stories that connect people and then get it out to the people that need to hear it.
Exactly.
And
it can be applied to so many different things too. Like when you brought up plumbing emergency, I had one of those this summer. Had all the disaster restoration things going on, which was so interesting because a couple years ago, I worked with a disaster restoration company in California who came to us for graphic design. They needed to design their whole folder and write all the things for, like, someone has a flood in their house. Somebody shows up at their door, like, what are you going to hand that person who is in the middle of a really traumatic situation?
Sure.
And that's what they came to us for help for that. And of course, StoryBrand was the foundation of everything, because there's just the part that is so important to me is that empathy piece, and showing that balance of empathy and authority, which when you talk about a disaster, you got to be empathetic, but also part of that empathy is how concise and clear can we be in these written materials so that you don't add to people's trauma by having them confused by the way these things are designed.
Well, they say we use this machine with this chemical, not this machine with this chemical, and nobody knows any difference between the two things, and we don't really care that much. We just want to get it solved, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So it really provides so much freedom for people, and can be applied to anything. So
awesome. Tell me about doing this work in Columbia. So how much local work do you do, and what's it like running a business in Columbia?
That is an interesting question, because I started officially kind of launched in 2016. No intention of getting involved locally, and I didn't even try. And so I have enjoyed the luxury of inbound clients from all over the country, all over the world, and just never made the attempt to really get involved locally. I had some, local people find me, and that was great. But I just we were using Zoom before it was cool. Yeah. We were virtual before it was cool. And
back when people were still using Skype. You remember Skype?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
How did that not be the most popular platform?
Somebody missed the boat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this summer actually was this moment. I was like, okay, another one of my Lynn takes action moments. I was like, I am missing out on my community, and I'm going to get involved locally. And I had made up a story in my head about how hard it was going to be. And it's like, oh, I got to go downtown and parking meters and deal with all, just spoiled suburban woman.
So that's when you saw Bill's post online.
That's right. Yeah. No, but it's just Columbia. I love Columbia. It's a big, small town. It really is. It's not intimidating. It's not scary, like some big cities are or would be to me. And just I started attending networking events and just started showing up at places like 1 Million Cups and just, how can I serve? I'm here to serve. Showed up at, that's what I've been doing, is showing up and how can I help? How can I serve other business owners? And it's opened a lot of doors for me very quickly, which again, we got to not make up so many stories in our heads about how things are going to be.
Listen, mindset is everything, right? It's it's the whole shooting match.
Yeah.
So how did you get your clients, if you weren't focused in Columbia and you were focused externally, how did you get your clients? Do the 18 people that you have on your team that collaborate with you, do they help service some of those leads, or?
They only help with naming. So those, and then I have another team. I have a web designer and a graphic designer and a few other people on my team. But I did everything through content marketing and SEO, and just like, okay. And you may have heard of the book They Ask You Answer. I believe Marcus Sheridan is the author. But before he wrote that book, somehow I figured out that principle before I read the book or heard of it, and just started thinking, how can I, what kind of questions are people typing into Google? And
how can I be the answer?
How can I be the answer so that I can show up? That's how I got found by, for naming, but other things too, for StoryBrand. Is I just started titling my articles literally with the question, and then tried to write really good content that was helpful.
Well, naming is a wonderfully narrow niche.
It is. It is.
It's great.
I have succeeded in the StoryBrand community too, to really be known as the naming person. At least 600-ish guides. The number goes up and down, but I work with a lot of other marketing firms, because most marketing people do not want to deal with naming, because it's a pain, as you mentioned some of the things that come up. So they're like, send them to Lynn. So they send them over to me, and then I send them back, just because we have a really clean process that it works. And we've done over 500 naming projects now. And so, but content marketing, that's the answer.
So let's dig into that a little bit more deeply. So content marketing, you mean creating content for what platform, in what way? Writing?
Writing blog articles on my website, writing articles on LinkedIn, finding places that rank higher than me. For instance, there are different. Quora is one of them, Quora. Usually if you type in any question, Quora is going to be on page 1. So I started, Reddit is another one. But just if you look and, type in a question and look and see what's on page 1, and then see if you can figure out a way to piggyback on that platform's ranking and their credibility. Because Quora will always rank higher than Ink and Key,
Right.
And so you can just write, answer questions on there. So I started going on to Quora and answering questions about naming. And that's how so many people found me. And what's fun too is clients that would work with us would go back to those original questions and make comments about their good feedback. And which also, people, buyers now, especially from what I understand, are about 70% of the way to making a final buying decision before they contact the business owner.
Right.
And so they do their research. And so people tend to gravitate towards places like Quora and Reddit and other platforms to hear from real people, to get answers and dig into, are these people for real? Are they legit? So that's kind of how I approached it.
That's cool. I haven't heard anybody talk about that particular procedure before. And I guess you're already good at writing, so writing makes sense, right?
It does. Yeah. And LinkedIn.
Yeah.
A lot of people have LinkedIn profiles, but they don't ever write articles on LinkedIn, which is just one of those nice little features. So, just another little something. I was talking to the head of the StoryBrand community yesterday. I was chatting with her about a few things, and we were talking about social media. And she said, "Oh, you're so great on LinkedIn." And I'm like, well, I think the key is just, number one, showing up. But then also just doing things maybe that other people aren't doing. Even though it's not that big of a deal, it helps you to stand out. For instance, just to write an article. A lot of people have LinkedIn, but they don't take the time, or they don't have the time, or they haven't figured out how to outsource the writing on there.
Well, and I found a guy, I guess it was in the fall, that did a podcast about LinkedIn, and he was a LinkedIn expert. And he talked about writing is like text articles with no pictures are prioritized by LinkedIn in their algorithm. So the kind of algorithm as it sits for LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Video is coming on, but it's still prioritized for writing. And of course, for me, I'm not a writer as much as I am a video maker, right? So I can make 10 videos in the matter of an hour, right? But for me to write an article is painful, right? And I've got Grammarly and all those things to help me, but like it is painful. And there's no doubt that I don't write with AI because it's all over the place. But I was like, okay, well, I'm going to try this, right? And I wrote my first text article, or whatever it is. I don't think it was an article exactly, but it was just, I wrote a couple of hundred words in text, and I got 4 times the engagement on that than I got on videos. I'm like, okay, let me try this, right? And I think so much of it is digging into that thing, trying the different things and digging into that thing that works, digging into that thing that functions. And I know for us, we're primary. I mean, we're B2B. Certainly, we've done 1 or 2 things that were for consumers, but like most of what we do is B2B. So like LinkedIn is kind of a perfect platform for us, and so it's just kind of cracking that nut, trying to figure out how to get it. And part of what you say is like showing up, just making sure that you're showing up. So that's cool. Have you read StoryBrand 2.0?
I have skimmed it. I have not read the whole thing.
I just saw it last week. I'm gonna add it to my Audible.
Yeah.
I'm finishing up one right now.
I'm aware of like what's been taken away, what's been added, and so I kind of have a good understanding of that.
Right.
And I will read it, but just haven't.
Well, I just read over Christmas. I read Malcolm Gladwell did a Tipping Point Revisited. So he wrote The Tipping Point apparently 25 years ago, which I was like shocking that it was that old. But he basically dug into new examples of tipping points and new examples of things. And COVID was one of them, obviously, because his big thing is things taking off, or epidemics taking off. And he used fashion and music and other things in the first book. But like he actually talked about COVID this time. And it was really, really interesting. I love it when an author can revisit a topic like that and really make it work. So what does the future look like for Lynn? Where do we go from here?
Yeah, that is a great question. I'm, the older I get, the more aware I am of how quickly each year passes. And so every year I dig into time management, but, even more so, I think also January is a great time to do that. But just, there's a lot of interesting things I'm thinking about right now, but mainly, thinking of, do I still want to be doing this when I'm 80? And it's like, maybe, but I don't know. I have a lot of things on my mind as far as, do I want to get this thing ready to sell at some point? Do I not? So, at the moment, I just want to grow. I want to help more people. I want to expand my reach. And my focus this year is local. Columbia, South Carolina. I'm digging into showing up everywhere I can, trying to serve. Here we go. Yeah, right. So, that really local is my focus this year. And I also am really interested in doing more speaking so I can get more practice speaking, but also just because the one-to-many approach is smart, right? It's better for my time to speak to, you mentioned like an association of luxury home builders. I'd love to go speak to that association and talk to them about their messaging, and show up and be helpful. And so those are the kind of things I'd like to do. And those are the kind of things I think that could help us grow, but also help us help other people,
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, you could come in the studio and make a training course. You know,
I mean,
that's
There you go.
that's a thought. I do have a teaching background, so
there you go.
Yeah.
Just come in and teach.
And then
a
you
little
put it online, and then those videos just make money. You don't have
Yeah,
to
you
do
want to
anything.
talk about one to many, many.
Right,
That's one to
know.
very
I
many,
know.
right? If you get the formula
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Well, Lynn, it's so great to have you on. Thank you so much. And I am
pleasure.
always fascinated with story brand guides. I've not talked to very many. Just met 2 in the last couple months, which is really fascinating.
love that.
But it was great talking to you. We're going to end up with our 5 questions. So
Okay.
5 favorites.
5 favorites. Let's start off with what is your favorite story?
My favorite story?
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Or book.
Yeah.
Okay.
In any form.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to go back to childhood. My favorite story was Cinderella.
Oh,
you know,
nice.
Cool.
I loved that story.
Yeah.
And, you know, just that's a transformation story, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah,
Yeah. Transformation, then transformation back. So
Yeah.
going back and forth.
that's right.
So awesome. Favorite sitcom or TV show? We started off with sitcom, but we like I would ask people what their favorite sitcom was, and they would give me a drama. So I was like, you know,
Yeah.
why am I restricting it?
Yeah.
Let's talk about what your favorite TV show is.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I'm gonna go old school to Seinfeld.
Yeah.
I actually know one of the people who wrote some of his stand-up material because he
Yep.
was also a stand-up comedian.
Yep.
And worked with the guy, and so that kind of got like a little bit of an inside scoop on what was going on, and you know, and so
Nice.
that was really fun. But yeah, love Seinfeld.
So when my wife and we got engaged in 1997, and we went to New York City for New Year's Eve, and one of the things we did that week was the guy Kenny Kramer that the Kramer character was
Yep.
based on did a tour. So Kenny Kramer took you on a tour. It started in a theater, and he'd talk a few minutes about his life with Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David. And then we went on a bus, and we went all the way around Manhattan to all of the Seinfeld landmarks, and he would point out little things. Went to the Soup Nazi's kitchen, and we went to Tom's Diner, and we went to all of these places. And then we got little kind of swag at the end of it. So
that's
I'm a
awesome.
Seinfeld fan from way back. So I'm with you. I just finished all 9 seasons, so I've just finished it the other day. I rewatched it on Netflix.
Oh, that's
all the
awesome.
way through, and the finale episode is just as bad as I remember it. It is a mockery of the entire love for the entire series. It's like I was really shocked at how,
In a way, it's kind of fitting.
well, right. It's like we've been playing a joke on you for 9 seasons. These are horrible people that you've been watching doing terrible things.
So-
and they deserve to go to jail. You know.
My dad, you know, back when Seinfeld was on TV regularly, it was sitcom mania, right?
Right,
So
sure.
we would sit down as a family and watch whatever.
Yep.
He wouldn't watch it.
Really.
He hated it
Really.
because they're all terrible people.
And we got attached somehow, right?
And the other, like, he also he had a love-hate with Home Improvement because he thought it was funny. It was, you know, he's a guy's guy,
yeah.
but he cannot stand the dumb dad.
Right. Right.
So, and the whole slapstick of it all is that Tim Taylor was a dumb dad.
right.
And he just couldn't watch that either. It's like, all right, well, we'll just watch something else.
And it's funny that how much of our childhood was sitcoms every Thursday. You know, you would sit down and watch 3 or 4 sitcoms
I didn't
in a
need
row.
a TV guide. I knew every single show
Yeah.
when they were on and what the.
And you'd have to wait a week in between, you know. And the thing about binging Seinfeld on Netflix is that they're 21-minute episodes, so you can watch 2 or 3, you know, in a row without missing a whole lot, you know. And so you can get through a whole season quickly.
All right,
Sorry,
last
I
thing.
derailed.
Oh, that's great.
What would be your last meal if you were on death row? What would your
my
last meal
gosh.
be?
I will just, without a doubt, some kind of delicious pasta,
Oh.
homemade sauce,
Yeah.
homemade garlic bread, big
Nice.
salad. Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
I'm kind of with you on that
Glass of
one.
wine. Yeah.
I'm kind of with you on that one. What's your favorite song?
Oh, my favorite song. Gosh, I'm terrible with naming favorite songs. Let me think for a second, see if I can. It's a song about story, actually. And I just played it the other day. I can't think of what it's called. That's terrible.
Who sings it?
I'm also terrible about that. I'm sorry. It's
How did you
not
pull
my
it up?
thing. Like, it's funny. People have all, their Spotify.
Yeah, and
like,
it happens to be on the list.
I have a silent little life, actually. And so I can't work with music in the background. And I like a lot of old school music, and so I would say Steely Dan, Doobie Brothers.
Nice.
That's kind of what I gravitate to when I go
Sweet.
to music.
Okay.
And so which is why I'm like not great at like pop culture current music.
If I could be one musician in the
yeah.
history of music, I'd be Michael McDonald. That would
Yeah.
be
I could
my.
see that.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
love to be Michael McDonald.
Yeah.
Doesn't care what anybody thinks about him. He's amazingly talented in all ways, and is exactly the same now at 80-something years old as he was in the 70s at 35. And I love Michael McDonald, so I'm with you. That's awesome.
The song is Unwritten. It popped into
Unwritten.
my head.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
I knew it would.
Yeah.
I knew
There you
it'd
go.
pop in there at some point, but there it went.
That's great.
Yeah.
I like that song as well.
Yeah.
And that's the very famous Emma Stone scene from the A-List where she has the card that's the same artist that does Unwritten.
Okay.
So yeah. Okay. And
Last
what's the last one? Sorry, my tangents are getting
Favorite
longer.
season?
Favorite season? Summer.
Nice.
100%. Yeah.
I don't know.
Cool.
Yeah.
We dropped the season of the year, and she still said summer.
Yeah.
So psychologically, we don't have any.
We don't
information.
know. It's,
Yeah.
it's
We
all
don't
in
have
the
any.
biggest
We don't have
internet.
any good data
Yeah.
for that. But
Or I
were,
could say this season of my life.
yeah,
is my
yeah, that's
favorite
right.
too. Yeah.
Somebody the other day said football season.
Yeah.
I was like, football
Yeah.
season makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, Lynn, thank you so much for being on. This was really great. I appreciate coming on, and we'll see you soon.
Okay.